changed people's lives because of his actions?
How did Milton Hershey change people's lives? I think just completely changing people's lives by giving them an opportunity that they never would have had. And you hear that from our alumni time and time again, even current students, that it is a completely life-changing opportunity to come to the school.
So why is education so an important priority in Pennsylvania?
I don't know if I would isolate Pennsylvania, but I can speak to Mr. Hershey of why it was important to him.
Because I did some research and Stephen Gerrard, he put all his schools in Pennsylvania.
Well, now that I think about it, we have Gerard and Carnegie and, Mr. Hershey, those kind of cover the state. And I think it might even be just a real kind of practical or common sense answer of Philadelphia and colonial times. There so much it happened in Philadelphia and, when the country was formed and everything. And I know there was a gentleman that started out in Philadelphia, and now I forget his name, but he ended up and founded the University of Pittsburgh and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette newspaper. And it was kind of like he just went west, but he started in Philadelphia.
So there's also orphanages, orphan association is in Philadelphia too, so it's pinpointing everything.
I think it was more locale, and for Stephen Gerrard, it was the shipping center and things like that.
Who were Milton Hershey's inspirations?
His aunt and his mother were very instrumental when he first started out in business. They moved, a lot of times lived with him in Philadelphia and wrapped candies, and his aunt, I'm sure you found this out in your research, lent him money to start business. It was never quite enough of a foundation for him to be successful early on, but his mother definitely was an inspiration, but you can't discount his father also, because even though he wasn't successful in terms of being a farmer or being dependable, he still gave Milton that example of being a visionary and having a dream. Yeah, right.
So how is Milton Hershey educational?
Well, he had probably comparatively third grade education. He attended 6 or 7 schools, and for anyone who's ever changed schools, no matter why, it's hard. And so I think that because he did not have it, we have quotes where he said he wanted to give, boys, because it was boys in the school at first, the opportunities that he didn't have.
So what was Milton Hershey's educational legacy?
I think, again, it's just to give, he always said he wanted to give boys the opportunities that he didn't have. And even though he wasn't a formally educated man, he read newspapers a lot. He was very, very intelligent. And it was mainly by experimentation, trial and error.
So would you say, the school was his legacy?
Definitely. And he always firmly stated it wasn't just the school, it was a home in school. And it wasn't so much the academic education, but he wanted to give boys a vocational training in addition to the academics so that they could be independent and earn a living. That was very important to him.
Was his wife one of his inspirations?
Definitely, and he always said the school was Kitty's idea. And in fact, it was just a couple of years ago we found out that Kitty served as a founding member and was a lifelong member of the Lancaster Charity Society. It doesn't exist in the same name, but it's kind of morphed and evolved over the years and changed names, so it basically is still in existence. So she not only was just a wealthy woman who wrote a check, but she actually personally served on the mission committee, which heard cases. So she would have definitely known of the plight of poor and struggling families and especially children in the area.
So how would she serve? Like, would she go like to blood drives or something?
I'm not sure. We don't have any more detail than that she served on the committee and heard and reviewed cases.
Did she have any influences, or is it like just her own idea?
Well, she came from a poor family also. Her parents were first-generation Irish immigrants from Jamestown, New York. So, and she left school probably equivalent to her senior year to work and help the family. So she and Milton had that common bond of growing up struggling.
So how do you think Gerard and Hershey are alike?
Well, they're very much alike in the sense that they invested in people, and we always kind of separate out Mr. Hershey as opposed to a Carnegie or a Rockefeller. They were all truly great philanthropists, but Mr. Hershey and also Stephen Gerard with Gerard College invested in people. And that is something that's definitely a ripple effect, because it's not just maybe you as a student, but it's your family for generations that would benefit from it.
I heard like they both focused on one social problem, because they both focused on education. And so like, were there like, why did they focus on it? Was there like any something factor in it?
But and they lived in completely different times too. So and Stephen Gerard also did a lot of other things for Philadelphia.
Yeah, the fever.
Yes, and there's real estate that's still in the city trust. So he did a kind of maybe more of a diverse philanthropy, where Milton Hershey, it was just one specific thing, a home and school for children.
Did Milton Hershey like go through any articles or documents for inspiration?
His lawyer, Judge John Snyder from Philadelphia, they definitely researched the Gerard College. And if you look at the Gerard College deed of trust that started the school and the Milton Hershey School deed of trust, you definitely see similarities.
So like, what is the similarities? Would it be like their objective or something?
Well, and the wording, kind of, yeah, the wording.
Who did Milton Hershey inspire?
Probably every student that has come through the school, every person who's worked for the school, and it continues.
Is there like any major philanthropist like Bill Gates or something?
That would be similar?
Yeah, I mean like Bill Gates said he was inspired by Rockefeller. So
Oh, like who would have maybe inspired Milton Hershey? I don't know if he ever said that anyone, he always just kind of refers back to advice his mother gave him. And it's just kind of like when Milton Hershey, she advised him not to let his money, his millions spoil him.
like his conscience and all that.
Mm-hmm.
What legacy did Milton Hershey and Catherine Hershey want to leave, and why?
It was for the school, and we have a quote, I'm paraphrasing, but he said he kind of set everything up intertwined with the Hershey Chocolate Company and everything that he did. He set it up all intertwined, that it would all be for the benefit of the school. And what's really different about Mr. Hershey is that he did this while he was still alive. And that's what sets him apart. Most of their philanthropists, it was in their will, and it was once they passed away, and it was left to other people to carry out their wishes. But Mr. Hershey started the school when he was still alive, and was alive for 35 years of when the school was operational, so he had his personal imprint on the school.
Did Milton Hershey base like the Hershey Trust Fund on Gerard's work?
I think somewhat, yeah.
Was it also Peabody's fund too?
That I have no knowledge of whatsoever. I've never heard it documented or mentioned at all.
So like Peabody was just, because Peabody was kind of like the same time frame as Milton Hershey, so I thought they would have some similarities.
They might have known about it. And again, you know, that time period, people of that kind of social strata, you know, they did ocean crossings, you know, possibly knew each other. I know Milton Hershey knew Henry Ford. So, we just don't have any documentation or knowledge of it.
So is Milton Hershey School related to Rosenwald schools? They're kind of like.
No. Girard College we're similar to. We're very similar to Boys Town in Nebraska. That was started by Father Flanagan. We're also similar to King Kamehameha schools in Hawaii.
So like, are there any similarities? Because all I know is like Rosenwald schools was like just for black children or something. Because Rosenwald had a special interest in them.
Okay.
But like only Milton Hershey was acting like Girard, only poor white orphans.
The original deed of trust was white orphan males, and when we teach about the deed of trust and why it was written, I think anything in history, to know the why, you need to look at the who, what, where, and when. And we look at Milton and Catherine Hershey, who could not have a family of their own. What would their family have looked like? When, in the early turn of the century time period, this was all farmland here. We were not a diverse area here at all whatsoever. And even it wasn't that long after the Civil War and freed slaves, when they did come north, they went to the cities because that's where the jobs were.
So did like Milton Hershey support any local funds before he constructed Milton Hershey School? Because that's like 1909, there's like a big gap.
Right. We actually have documentation that he donated money, I think it was for a science lab at Franklin and Marshall College in Lancaster, because they lived there first. He also donated money to I think it's St. Patrick's Cathedral in Harrisburg, because his wife was Catholic. And in addition to just creating the whole town with a trolley transit system, with a park for the townspeople and employees. He wanted all the churches to come together and form one church, which we know didn't happen. But then he gave each church money. And he also, there's a trust endowment for the public schools. And he built the first consolidated public school in Hershey.
So were any schools inspired by Milton Hershey School?
I don't know of any during his lifetime, but we have had over the years many schools of this country and others come to Milton Hershey School for ideas and benchmarking, if you will.
I researched that like Milton Hershey and Catherine Hershey, they both traveled around the world. Did they build any other schools around the world?
Yes, Hershey, Cuba. I don't know if you've discovered about Hershey, Cuba in your studies. Well, there's one to go home and look up. Mr. Hershey,
all I know about Cuba is like he used that for the sugar cane.
he did have sugar refineries, yes, but he also had a train system and a town and a hotel. And actually, he started a school very similar to what was then Hershey Industrial School. And the prime reason he started it was there was a very tragic train accident, and a lot of people were killed. So he started it primarily to help those orphans from the train accident, but it was very similar to the Milton Hershey School.
So how did Catherine Hershey contribute to Milton Hershey School?
Well, other than being credited that it was her idea, she worked very closely. When Mr. Hershey started the school, he hired a couple, George and Prudence Copenhaver, and they were the first teachers, first house parents, first administrators. They did everything. And they were both certified teachers. They'd gone to college for teaching. And Prudence worked with Mrs. Hershey primarily on the home life of the school. They were very adamant. They did not want the boys to live in dormitories. They wanted a true home environment and not dressed in like orphans or anything. So she was very involved with those home life aspects of the boys.
So how is Girard a leader in education?
How is, pardon?
Girard.
I just think just very much like Milton Hershey gave children advantages and opportunities that they wouldn't have had if they would have stayed in a regular environment.
Did they both go through the same hardships to get to the top?
I don't know. I know just very sketchy details about Stephen Girard's life, but he was a very successful sea merchant. And there's if you haven't discovered it on the Girard website, there's a really nice film about Stephen Girard and the history of the college and the school, more about his background.
All I know about him is like in his early life is that his father was like Milton Hershey's father. He was always traveling pretty distant and all. So and then he died. So that he was on his own.
Okay.
So and his mother was sick too. So he was like just traveling around the sea and all.
And I think his wife couldn't have children, he didn't have children either. So there are a lot of similarities, but they lived in completely different times.
So is there any others that Milton Hershey was inspired by? Because I remember he was insulting Rockefellers. Like he was saying that he was like a cold-blooded person.
Mm-hmm.
And he would spend all his money on himself.
Yeah, I think Milton Hershey, he was just a very simple man. He loved his life when he was a little boy growing up in the country and on the farm. When the school started growing, the boys started getting older in 1929, he developed the farm home program where the boys at grades 6 through 12 lived on farms, milked the cows, worked in the fields. So he was just a very simple, I mean, he liked to live the good life, but on the other hand, he was just pretty simple with how he lived. When he was, I'm trying to think, 1930, he gave over use of his High Point mansion home to be the town's country club and had just 2 rooms upstairs.
Because he was alone because his wife died in 1915, and then he wanted more people and all. I think he lived in like 1 room.
2 rooms, a bedroom and a study. But on the other hand, he spent a lot of time in Cuba. He would be gone for months at a time in Cuba. He loved the atmosphere, he loved the weather, he loved the people, that culture. And sometimes if he was in town, he would stay at the Hotel Hershey for a couple weeks because he owned it. Yeah.
So, what was Milton Hershey's educational vision?
He wanted his students just to be able to earn a good living and make their way in life. And I think his one quote was like, we don't intend to turn out, a group of college professors, but if somebody, has the intellect and wants to go to college. The first person they did give money to went to college wasn't very successful. So that kind of, I think, colored Mr. Hershey's view on that. But while he was still alive, there were students that did go on to college. One of our first alumnus of the year that went to work over at the Hershey Trust and Bank, I think, when he was maybe 15 or 16 years old. So it was more of the learning by doing. That was very important to Mr. Hershey.
I remember he revealed he transferred a lot of money to the Hershey School from the Hershey Company, and he revealed it in a 1923 interview.
Right.
And I remember everyone was surprised.
And everybody, we have a couple articles where he was what I call slammed in the press for doing so. And they said that it was very short-sighted to set up, because the deed of trust states that the school will exist in perpetuity. And, this legal binding document. And so people, when the news came out that he gave $60 million in this perpetual trust, they said this was when social service agencies were coming to the forefront, and they said he was short-sighted, he's going to run out of orphans, it's all these things. And what I think is really fascinating is 1933, Milton Hershey changed that deed of trust. He altered it himself. And so that's why it's so important that all this was done when he was alive, because we have that precedent that he changed that legal document. And it reflected what was going on in our country at the time, which was the Depression.
Were any presidents involved with Milton Hershey?
Not that I know of.
I think Herbert Hoover or something, I think they had a meeting, and they were just talking about his school and what's happening here. Herbert Hoover was interested in that, so
to send me that information. That's new to me.
So what is the legacy of Milton Hershey and why is it important to you?
The legacy of Mr. Hershey is all of the students that have come here before and all of the students that will come after. It's a human legacy. He's always said, I had no sons of my own, so I'm making the boys or children of the United States my heirs.
Yeah. He gave a lot of money to the school.
He did.
He also, I think, improved all the living conditions of here. Even he was shocked when they all gave they all were mad at him.
There was a strike in 1937, and that really affected him.
He was shocked and all.
Yep.
And I think the workers felt like he was spending more time with the kids instead of them or something. Maybe they're jealous.
Well, I think it was reflective of the unions coming in and having a completely different agenda, and Mr. Hershey took it very personally.
Did all philanthropists focus on one social problem?
I think, and this is just an opinion from what I can see, I think most people have one certain passion.
So why did Pennsylvania out of all states committed to improve child education and to have orphans and all? I think they built a lot of orphanages and all.
In the state system?
Yeah.
That I don't know. You have to research that one.
Did Milton Hershey even plan for the Hershey Medical School, Hershey Medical Center?
Not the medical center as it exists today, but there was the first town hospital was in the community building, which is right downtown in the corner of Chocolate and Cocoa. So that was the first Hershey hospital. And then a new Hershey hospital was built right down the street. It's since been replaced by a new building. But it was the school and the town hospital. My husband was born there.
Would he have a plan for the Hershey Medical Center if he was still if he lived a few more years or something?
Well, that was over 20 years after he passed away. So, I would think, just kind of knowing what I do about Mr. Hershey, that he would have definitely supported a brand new state-of-the-art facility, because when you look back with what he did with facilities and buildings and ideas, he always wanted and latched on to something that was new and modern and state-of-the-art.
For his Hershey employees, did he build the homes for them and give good living conditions, or did they have to make it by themselves?
He did have homes built, and he felt it was very important that they owned their own home and not to have, like other company towns, the company itself actually owned the homes, and he felt it was very important for the employees to own their own home.
Did Milton Hershey and his wife go to Girard College or any other schools for inspiration for nursing school?
We do think that Mr. Hershey traveled to Girard College, and we also know that when they were researching the farm home program, he benchmarked Berea College in Kentucky because they have a similar kind of farm program.
Like that benchmark college, they also went into the fields area and made a college or something?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but we know he did kind of research that. He also, when he started school, researched the Russell Sage Foundation.
So that's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Thank you.